two, one.
Hello, and welcome to the panel on Charlotte. We're missing we're missing Julia at the moment, but she'll pop in and join us when she can. We are currently joined with Rod, the editor. Hello, Rod. Want to say hi?
Hello, hi everyone.
We have Mel, who is the animation director.
Hi. Nice
And we have Tahir, who is the director.
Howdy. Hello.
Julia is the producer, will join us shortly. My name is Ben. It's my second hosting panel this year. Delighted to be here in a chair again, and absolutely thrilled to be with this team. I was very late to the party here with regard to Charlotte. I only found out about it through the Dingle Animation Festival. And I was kind of disgusted with myself because I consider myself a bit of a comic book fan. So to find out that there was a film made about the woman who was credited as the first graphic novelist, and I didn't know about her work, or there was a film or a novel, or there was an opera about her, I was kind of letting the team down a little bit. So what I'd like to do is, maybe there's a few people who are also watching who haven't seen much about this, or maybe might not know like I did, and maybe we could play the first clip and talk about it afterwards. So can we play that first clip, please?
I'm going to paint the story of my life, of my family. It could take hundreds of paintings. And I don't know how much time I have left.
None of us do.
I will put everything I have into it, everything beautiful and everything hideous. Only by doing something mad can I hope to stay sane.
So there we go. It's a stunning looking production, and I'd like to open up this question. I'll give it to you guys individually when I pose it to you. But there's something I feel very strongly about with regards to animated features, and that is that animation is a medium. It's not a genre. It's not only used to produce family fare productions. It can produce films of any genre, whether they be horror, whether they be westerns, or whether they are about an artist coming of age during World War II, a female Jewish artist at that. And these are subjects that deal with some pretty difficult areas. Certainly not something for children at the time. Maybe if I could pick your brain here, maybe to hear, I could ask you about maybe some benefits in using animation to tell the story of Charlotte Salomon.
Yeah, well, the first thing I want to say is my goal as a filmmaker is to make my audience always feel disgusted when they watch just at themselves. So the fact that you were disgusted that you didn't know Charlotte is actually funny because a lot of us were introduced to Charlotte through this project as well. So it certainly isn't unique to you. I myself wasn't aware of this incredible person who'd lived this remarkable life. And when the opportunity came to animate or create a movie about Charlotte Salomon, a biopic, it kind of made sense to use animation. And I think the main reason is, well, she was obviously a very visual person, and her art was very evocative, and the way she used colors and blended her shapes together. We thought, it would really be doing justice to Charlotte to figure out a way to animate her story and actually use pieces of her work. So that's when the challenge began. It was, okay, well, this is actually a movie that it kind of plays closer to a live action in terms of, like you said, animation is usually reserved for like talking dogs and funny bunny rabbits. And how do we create something that's compelling but also convincing to audiences that these are actually real people. So we ended up creating a style that was pretty realistic, I'd say. Like the anatomy of the characters was not exaggerated. The facial expressions were very contained, and that kind of gave it a little bit of. I would say that was almost like the strength of it, where every time Charlotte did raise an eyebrow, any kind of a nuanced action, it was even more powerful because there just wasn't all this wacky stuff going on. So the character design and the art direction stage really took a long time. And trying to blend in Charlotte's own style, we kind of went further and further away as the production went on from Charlotte, who draws in a very impressionistic way. But we did use a lot of her color palette. For example, the film did not use any black. Charlotte never used black in her work. So just little things like that, we paid homage. But really where I think the movie comes alive in terms of representing Charlotte Salomon, the artist on screen, is the transition moments where we actually use her artwork and had it being painted on as if somebody was drawing it right in front of us. So those are the moments that I feel what we wanted to do, we did achieve, which was bring Charlotte's work to the world. And in my opinion, it could only work this successfully through using visual medium like animation.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's certainly something that I think you could take advantage of, having those transitions from her painterly work into the more like a traditional art style that you guys went with. I didn't realize there was a rule of no black in the film. That's really interesting. That's very good. I love kind of hearing about that kind of stuff, about it, the rules you guys had in production. I'd like to maybe go into a bit more about the film then. There we have an image there, and that's actually the title of her book, which is Life or Theatre. And that's not the one, but that is where I'd like to go with this. There's a blue line involved in this. And I only noticed you mentioned there was no black in the work, but there's a blue line in that image that you use throughout the production, and it's around all the characters as opposed to having a default kind of black outline on things or a black line on. And it's interesting how you kind of took from the very kind of semi-abstract work of Charlotte's and tried to transition that into something you could make a model sheet of. Could you maybe discuss that kind of process? Were there lots of iterations before you actually got to the designs that you got? I'll pose that to Tahir as well, please.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail right on the head there, where initially we absolutely had used Charlotte's own artwork as inspiration. So Life or Theatre is a fictionalized version of Charlotte's own life. So there are representations of each character in her life is represented in the book. So we had her designs as it were of her grandfather, her dad. So the first iterations, and this is common with feature films with a lot of R&D, was really inspired more by Charlotte's work, and the characters were exaggerated in ways, and the limbs kind of flowed differently, and the face, everything that we could kind of draw from her own work, we tried to kind of infuse it. But really what happened there was the more exaggerated the characters were, the less grounded in real life, as it were. So it became kind of difficult to tell this story that has these themes of suicide and Nazis and this terrible time in human history, and really not do it in a way where we can express the way the characters would really act and all the subtle little emotions So that's why we kind of went a little bit more towards reality. We rotoscoped some of the scenes that were really challenging, and that was a benefit too, to kind of just give it that look and feel of something that is kind of live action, because the script was certainly written in that manner, but also set it in this beautiful, lush animated world. So it was a balance. I think that's what makes it very unique. But I also think that is the strength of the film.
And I believe, Tahir, were you head of story on this as well? You worked on the animatic?
Yeah, I was. I actually came into the film through the story department before I quickly transitioned into a co-director. So yeah, I mean, that was just, again, taking the story from script to screen in that way. It was really interesting because I've never worked on a project that really was written in a way where I think most of the writers were live action writers. So it was a really nice blending of these two worlds, live action and animation, where we had to kind of service the needs of both and try to find a hybrid model that would work. And that really came through the storyboarding process.
It seems like a very deliberate choice throughout the production, because it comes across as something that's not shot like a typical animation production. It's shot very much like a live action. There's lots of close-ups. We really get involved in maybe what the characters are thinking as opposed to what they're doing. And it's not a production that's heavy on massive, big flailing arms and overlapping actions. It's about subtlety, as you said. Acting. Was there a lot of rotoscoping reference for this, or was it kind of like as an idea, or was it just for maybe the really complicated scenes that you were referencing with rotoscoping?
Yeah, and I will absolutely give Mel a chance to jump in on this, because she really informed a lot of the close-up acting, as it were. But that was a deliberate choice made. Like, we've gone through, like, we have made this movie so many different times in terms of storyboarding, and that's really where we were able to kind of see, okay, what's successful and what isn't. And the earlier iterations had the needle pointing slightly more toward wider shots, and like you say, I wouldn't say flailing arms, but we certainly had more full body kind of things. But we found through the process that it was really important to be close to the actors, and to Charlotte specifically. We're telling this story through her point of view, essentially, and we really wanted the audience at all times to connect with Charlotte. She was our vehicle, and she was the person that we really wanted the audience to have that instant connection with. So really getting the camera close to her, and as I mentioned, the style of our film, which we didn't really exaggerate anything, that really gave every single bit of subtlety or nuance to Charlotte's face, for example, that much more strength, because we weren't moving things all over the place and making the audience, I wouldn't say distracted, but we really wanted them to be really close to Charlotte. And so Mel, who is our animation director, I would say she really helped us pull that off successfully. How do you use a 2D face with not a lot of expression in terms of like wrinkles and what you can do with the eyes and mouth in traditional animation, where you can just stretch like Jim Carrey? How do we give it that strength that we need in performance? So Mel really gave Charlotte that life and that voice. So Mel, if you want to, not to take over your job, Ben, but Mel, if you want to kind of describe what that process was like and that challenge.
Oh, feel free to take over my job, no problem. Just before we go into Mel's answer there, I just want to say hi, Julian.
Hi, everyone. I'm so sorry for arriving late to the party, but I'm very happy to be here.
No problem. We'll come into you now in a sec. I just want to hear what Mel has to say regarding the animation there first.
So do I.
Excellent. Please, Mel.
Hi. Well, it's like you said, animation is not a genre; it's a medium, and so just like anything, North America is really focused on that bombastic type of animation that's mostly geared towards comedy, but there's lots of things that you can take as examples, especially in over in Europe, that we can use as references. When I was telling animators, if you want to look at some really good other animations, that also do a really good job at subtlety, for examples, there's actually quite a bit out there. There's the Red Turtle, there's the stuff from Cartoon Saloon. Like I had worked on The Breadwinner before, partially when that was in production, The Secret of Kells, the Wolf Children, the Remy Chaillet's stuff like Long Way North. There's lots of things that have simplistic that you can let your animators kind of use as an example, but also in all honesty, it's telling them what would you do in this situation. Here's a mirror, just look at your own face and extrapolate that when you're doing Charlotte. And the main thing always is less is more. A lot of the close-ups, you have to have those kind of micro expressions of really trying to get the character, having the audience see, what is the character thinking, without having to pantomime it, like you would usually, comedy, you want to go really big. Well, drama, you don't, you kind of want to be a little bit more subtle, and just trying to get that across to them. It takes a little bit, but after a while, people understand. And of course, you're always there to kind of lead them. We had rounds every day where we were looking at people's shots, and giving our input and giving drawovers, giving tips on maybe what we should do with the acting, in what direction. So our team was always I think led in a good way to make sure that Charlotte hit always the right tones and and feelings throughout the production.
And can I ask, was this done remotely as well, the production?
No, it was all in-house. Yeah, our team was for the most part, well, the pandemic caused a little bit of issues, but for the majority of it, we were all together in the same building, which was great, which was also great because the one-on-one, speaking with people, especially the people that hadn't really done serious drama and had to be steered away from kind of the stuff they were used to with the larger movements and stretch out expressions. It really helped that we were right there kind of guiding them to tone it down, and they got it. It's just a little bit of a switch in your mindset, but just like in live action, some of my favorite dramas actually star comedians. We have Stranger Than Fiction that had Will Ferrell in it, and that was great and a wonderful drama. And Punch Drunk Love that had Adam Sandler in it. So you can have, people can, you can do some really great things with different genres, no matter where you originally come from, let's say.
That's really cool. I love hearing when people are drawing inspiration from other forms almost, and maybe places you wouldn't expect them to. That's where you actually give us a great segue there when you talk about like bringing in from live action. I'd like to bring in Rod and Julian maybe here I understand that this was your first foray into animation. You hadn't been here before. Maybe we could start off with Julia telling us about how I understand you concepted this idea and maybe why you went with animation and how you found that. And then I'll come back to you, Rod, and maybe we can talk about how you went from editing the animatic and from animation, maybe what you've done previously on shows like Expanse, etc. That'll be okay. So Julia, can I kick it to you first?
Yeah, sure. So about 10 years ago, I was on a morning run and the idea came into my head that Charlotte Salomon drew her life story. So I needed to produce an animated film of her life story. And I had no idea what that would entail because I'd never worked in animation before, but I just sort of put my head down and went forward. And the first thing I did was something that I was familiar with, is I developed the screenplay. So I optioned the collection of paintings from the Charlotte Salomon Foundation, and started working first with Eric Rutherford and then with David Besmosbis, and that took about 4 years. So that was the genesis of the idea. And I was first given a book of Charlotte's paintings when I was 13. So it had been on my mind and in my heart for quite some time. And so the process of developing the screenplay, as I said, was very familiar. It relied on classical dramaturgy and working with people who have an ear for dialogue and choosing which elements from the original material we would keep, which we wouldn't keep. For instance, in the original material, there's a whole storyline where Charlotte imagines that her stepmother and Wolfson, her first love interest, are also in love. And so we decided not to pursue that. That's very, very typical. But then everything else that came after that was very, very new for me. And it's quite different from live action in terms of the creative process.
One of the bigger ones, I think, is generally that there's not much left at the end of production to throw into the editing bin. Animation is figured out before we do anything because it's far too costly to have gone to the bother of animating entire sequence, then realizing you don't need it, you need something else instead. So maybe we could talk to you, Rod, about this. How did you find this? Was it easier now knowing you had all the material you needed and it was to go in a certain way, or was it a bit more restrictive? Please.
It's funny because as we said, it's my first jump into animation, and I didn't know what to expect. I can recall the first time I heard, first we're going to edit, then we're going to go into production. And I was like, what? I don't get that. And so when that became fairly clear, it was actually, it was revelatory in the sense that in the edit room, we had all this freedom now in terms of what it is that we could create based on what the script was. And examples of getting storyboards and animatics from the animators, and then looking at it and then all of a sudden reconceiving how a certain scene should start, how it should play out, what the coverage should be, which is so different from live action when you're given all this footage and you're like, okay, this is how they shot it. How can we make it work? Now it becomes this sort of like the other way where it's like, okay, I've got all these drawings. How can we make it better? Right? By changing things, or just rather than a close-up, why don't we start on the wide shot and come in, all these different sort of possibilities opened up, which for an editor was just this is awesome. This is great. Right. And to be able to in a way, I'm just kind of, bring Tahir in and say, look, can we instead of this angle, can we have a lower angle instead? And then they go off and they draw it, they come back and, can we change this performance a bit, right? In terms of just the animatic alone. So for me, it was very liberating. And the one thing that I did take from my live action experience into this was I was always focused on story and character. Right, which is everything I do, from science fiction to drama to comedy, it's always about that. And I think that if we don't have that foundation solid and working, then everything else will be a struggle in terms of getting the audience invested into the story and into these people that we're trying to present. So I was very highly focused on that. I mean, even to the point of like suggesting script changes, and so it was great. It was my experience in it was incredible, because I felt like, not only was I an editor, but I was helping in the writing, I was helping in the directing, I was helping in the cinematography, I was helping in the, and it was, to me, that was just like, it was great.
Sounds like maybe something you go back to working again, animation.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, like without a doubt, and the fact that it was a drama, and that we had to be restrained, and it wasn't something that, we could stretch out, like, like as everybody was saying, like, kind of make things big. We had to like really find the subtlety in this image that was, in 2D, and find the grace in terms of how to tell that story in this medium was challenging, but was really, really kind of just such an interesting process to be a part of.
It's very good. Like, you've all mentioned how kind of subtle this production was, and how there was an emphasis on it. I'm going to look for a clip now of a scene where Alfred and Charlotte are on a canoe, and yes, we've all been discussing there's a lot of subtleties in the animation, but there's one particular shot here that's so ambitious. I thought it was fantastic. I'd love if we could show that one now.
What is it, Lotte?
I love thunderstorms.
That jump down into the water gets a wow from me every time. Stellar work. There is something in this production and I really enjoyed, and it was how you guys used color throughout the show, where you depicted how Charlotte felt maybe happy or comfortable with something. And when she's in France, the colors are lovely, bouncy, warm. And then when she's in Berlin, they're quite brown and reds. There is a feeling of danger in the area. And I've just noticed now in that particular sequence, how the rain clouds are almost ominous about maybe, who she was with. But could you maybe, if I pose this to Tahir, maybe a little bit to Mel first, actually, by referencing the scene, so the animation to jump off the boat. Could you talk a little bit about like how you guys explored this, how you referenced this? Because that's a big jump and a big bit of movement for something that's quite a subtle style of animation throughout, and such an emphasis on acting as opposed to big actions.
Yeah, no, that shot was quite like storyboarded out. Like, it was one of our bigger, more ambitious shots where we wanted to really get it right. And that sequence, jumping off the boat, we used a harmony for the most part on our production, but there are certain shots like that one where we went full classical, just to be able to get the motion correct. So we employed animators that were really good with experience with classical animation to do those shots. So they did take a little bit longer to do. They were in the pipeline for quite a bit longer, but they turned out really, really, really well. But it was really thought out because due to timelines, it had to be done great like the first time, and so it really worked out, and it looked great. and it was due to a lot of pre-planning.
Very good. Like, really does. I wasn't expecting such a big shock when I was watching it initially, and it did get a big wow from me. Eyebrows raised. Could I also talk maybe to Tahir now about the color as well? There's, I don't know if it was deliberate. You mentioned color earlier on, where you're clearly not using black, so there is a purposeful movement and choice when you're using the colors. Could you talk maybe a little about how you use it throughout the production to convey a certain emotion or sympathy maybe with a character at a certain period of time in the film?
Yeah, and this was another thing that we really experimented with, because animation, the visual element of animation affords you that opportunity to play with the color palette in a way that you can sort of evoke different emotions based on the colors around the character, and there's a few sequences that we really wanted to be vibrant. I think you mentioned France. So essentially, Berlin, where Charlotte begins her life, and we start to first introduce those themes of her family history and the mental illness, and essentially the terrible tragedy that begins to happen. We really did want a color palette that was more subdued, and grays, and the Kristallnacht sequence, I think, where we got a lot of that red from the fires that were burning, to me were really, really where we tried to play with the scheme to get the audience to feel a certain way. There's a sort of an interlude while Charlotte's still young. She goes to the Sistine Chapel, and she's in Rome, and immediately you feel like you're in a different place. And we were, and that's what's great about what we were able to do, is that as soon as she walks in, everything just kind of comes to life in a different way, just through the way it's lit. And then, of course, the south of France, which, in its, anyone who's been there, I haven't, really kind of understands just how beautiful and serene a place like that can be by the water. So again, we wanted to put Charlotte in a different stage of her life, and want the audience to really feel like Charlotte has she's accomplished what she's wanted to accomplish. And to me, that the penultimate scene where she's with her lover at the sunset, and then just all those different hues and oranges, and was another deliberate choice where we wanted the audience to kind of feel like, in a perfect world, this is where the movie wraps and everything's great. And of course, we know how it ends. But so we did a color pass throughout the whole movie, a mood board with the different scenes, and just blocking out color. It was so important in terms of delivering that emotional punch to any given scene. So very, very many deliberate choices were made. And to me, that's just another check mark in the box of like, animation, we can tell stories like this. Let's use animation more, because you kind of do have those opportunities that you do in live action as well, but you can really enunciate or pronounce the color even stronger with the art direction. So yeah, that was really, to use a word, revelatory that Rod used, being able to do a dramatic piece, but using all the tools in the toolbox that animation allows. So yeah, that's kind of it for that answer, I guess.
That's great. Actually, you kind of gave me a great segue into another clip I'd like to show, actually, which is the Kristallnacht sequence. Could we play that clip now, actually, just so we can see all the browns and reds? That'd be great.
Get out of here! Oh my God. Standen Feuer!
Stunning stuff, like, and kind of gut wrenching there, as I think any artist seeing their work getting thrown on a bonfire hurts on so many levels. There is a part of that moment that I didn't cop on until afterwards, that it was the crystal knock actually happening. I didn't realize I had to ask Julia when we were talking just before this interview. And I think there is an amazing bit of work here from the art department again, where there's a lot of illustrations, all illustrations involved in that particular portfolio is thrown to the fire we've never seen because they were thrown on a fire. But the art department did such a great job of mimicking Charlotte's style. There are these 3 or 4 illustrations where we see from beginning to end the atrocities that Alfred had to deal with when he was in the war, and his experiences. And I mean, pure credit to your team there, because that's quite a feather in your cap for something that is a moment that, you know, the world has never actually seen, but it looked like these are all done by Charlotte. While I know we're kind of coming close to our time there, I just want to draw attention to the fact that this is a Q&A. So if there's any questions anyone would like to ask, please throw it our way and I will put it to the team. It's also, you guys said that you were all working in-house. That's amazing. And you can really clearly see it, because there's a real camaraderie with all you guys. In between little segments of someone adding something into a conversation, I can see you guys kind of laughing and chuckling at things. But I mean, how did you find the team gelling together? Was this across the board just a really good experience for everybody? Can I put that to maybe Julia first?
I don't think Mel remembers, but I think a third of our crew were remote. But maybe it's interesting how, but it felt really, really connected. And I would say that in terms of the animation, Mel and Tahir were really, really connected with all of the animators, both in-house and remotely, and would have daily talks. And so I'm not surprised that the recollection is that we were all in the same room together. For the animatic, we were all in the same room together. And we also could have, we had several screenings, as one does in live action when you lock picture. And so we had people come and give us notes, and then we'd go back to the drawing board. So we were all together.
That's amazing. That's just great, because I've heard of every production in the last while saying everyone was remote and they haven't even seen the person they've been talking to for 2 years, you know. I just have a question there regarding the music. One of the clip was stunning. The music especially really heightens the animation. Can I ask how the music was chosen? Can I ask maybe someone to step in to take that? Who had a big hand there in the music? Maybe Tahir or someone else? Julia as well? Yeah.
I'll jump in. Just
Julia, yeah.
I'll jump in because I missed the first part of the panel. So it's my duty to step up. We just worked with a genius. His name is Michelina Biscaglia. He had worked in animation and live action and documentary, and all of the music was worked on remotely. That was crazy. So Michelina would write cues, and then we would, it would be synced up in editorial, and then we would get on these Zoom calls and talk about them, and then he'd revise them. So that was a pandemic influenced experience for sure. And Michelina was just wonderful. He just knew what to do, and we sort of edged him along, but he came up with a theme. He came up with Charlotte's theme and then another theme, and he's just a master at what he does. So it was easy in some ways for us just to give little notes and talk about our feelings, but he owned his role in the film.
It's such an important part. It's I've heard it so many times about an animated film that, like, the music, the sound is half the film. It's so important.
I had no idea. So at the beginning, when we had the animatic, we had all of these music cues at the beginning. And I was like, those are too many cues. I mean, who has all these cues? It's ridiculous, 30 cues. Do you remember, Ron? Dial this down, dial this down. And then I think we have like 33 cues. So there was another learning curve for me that, the music really, really supports the emotional architecture of the film in ways that are very much required in animation.
Yeah, I'm seeing another question come in there asking, will you work in animation again? I've already asked Rod this, but Julie, I don't think I've asked you. Would animation be another venture you tackle again?
Never say never. I mean, I'm always drawn to the material, so never say never. And the other part of that answer is, of course, it's an incredible medium. I worked with wonderfully talented people. I learned a lot, and I do think the experience of telling drama, because I think I'm more oriented towards drama than I am towards comedy, in documentary, there's so much potential. And as Mel said, we didn't invent anything. We're part of a tradition of people who've been using animation to tell dramatic stories. So yeah, the right project, the right people, sure.
I'm just seeing that there's more comments about you guys as a team here. I'd like to add to Ben's comment on the team. I have to say they seem extremely centered and calm as a team. Are you always like that? I see Rod laughing the hardest. I'd like to put this question to him first.
Well, when you work with really great people that care about the project, that take ownership in it, it's hard not to as well. And I think that's the infectious thing about collaborating. And we were talking about remote, and like I don't think I would have been successful in what I was doing if I was remote, in no possible way, because to have access to Tahir, to pull him in and talk to him about something, to have Julia right there and just like immediately have her react to something that I'm doing is so instrumental in creating what we're trying to create successfully. And so yeah, and that just brings us all closer. And I mean, it's not always happy every single time, but even in the disagreements, there's like a lot of respect and a lot of just understanding that we're all going down the same road trying to make the best possible thing. And as long as you understand that, I think that it's like it's a good thing.
Great answer. Actually, kind of sounds like everyone in the production working towards making it more beautiful every step, kind of stuff. I really got an impression from all of you. Could I actually put that question to Mel as well? Kind of managing a team of animators, was it difficult to kind of, obviously you guys are all getting on very well, but you had to possibly tell them to kind of step back from pushing this too far and push the subtleties, that kind of stuff? Or did everyone, because you're in-house, most of you, was it just kind of something you look over someone's shoulder and go, that's how you do that, that's okay, whereas you can't do that kind of stuff remotely?
Well, it's animation's like Rod said, is very collaborative. It's like, to me, it's like the ultimate medium. Like I love animation. That's why I'm in it. But it's very, you have to work with people, especially with projects of this scope. Like no one can do everything themselves. You need to rely on people. You need to be able to work together to be able to make the best result possible. There's no way that small mini projects and shorts that you can do, but with this big of a project, like there's no way. You have to be able to work together. You have to be able to express your ideas and come up with the best thing, in all departments, because everything is made from scratch. And you have to know the strengths and weaknesses of everybody you're working with, and work around them so that everyone can play to their strengths, and to the best of their ability. So when you're working with a team and you're working with animators, it becomes pretty clear what some people are really good at, and some and some that need work, and then and also what they want to do. You don't want to force somebody to do something that they hate doing for weeks and months on end, because animation's a really long process too. You don't want to be miserable. So you look at your team, you work with them, and you see oh, these people, this person really loves and is really good at you know, the more subtle acting. And well, this person is actually way better at, you know, movement and action. And so, you know, they actually will work better for, you know, the scenes where Charlotte's running away, or, you know, or there's fighting or something like that. And so, you know, we'll give those shots to them. Well, this other person is much better at the more quiet moments where, you know, the characters are being contemplative. You know, maybe someone is a little bit better of a draftsman than somebody else. So, you know, you can give the shots that need a lot, that are a little bit more difficult angles, you know, for the scene, or need a lot of more redraw, you know, to this person. While if someone else is needs a little bit more help with using the rig, you know, you do that. So you try to break up the work in a way that is beneficial, not only for everybody who's working on it, but for the production themselves. And, you know, it takes a bit to, you know, but that's why it's really good to be in the same room, or, you know, talking with these people every day, you know, remote or not, you know, to get to see where they at, and to be able to push them to do their best to their ability.
That's brilliant. Guys, I hope there's more adult-centered animation coming from you guys in the future. I thought Charlotte was a stunning film. I can't wait to watch it again. Thanks for your time. Big thanks to the crew here at Animation Dingle. Thanks people for watching. Thanks to Scott for running the show for us here to make sure everything kind of worked out for us. Thank you. And congratulations to Dingle on 10 years of festival. Well done. And I'm looking forward to the next 10. All the best, guys. Thanks very much. And thank you guys for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.